24-year-old Russian woman Victoria Sokolova drowned in the pool of an Emirati developer's villa on Palm Jumeirah after he learned the truth about her life. Officially, it was an accident, but the details suggest otherwise. Victoria arrived in Dubai 3 years ago with 2 suitcases and dreams of a better life. Her passport contained a visa for a sales assistant at the Dubai Mall with a salary of $1,200 per month. She rented a 28-square-meter studio in Sharjah, a neighboring emirate, where the rent was $600. Every morning, Victoria would board a crowded bus and travel 40 minutes to work. She stood behind the counter of a cosmetics store for 8 hours straight, smiling at tourists and advising them on creams and lipsticks. She returned late in the evening to her tiny apartment with a single window overlooking the parking lot. This was her real life in Dubai. On social media, there was a different Victoria. She had 850,000 followers on Instagram. Her profile showed a completely different reality. In the photos, she posed in penthouses with panoramic windows overlooking the Burj Khalifa. She sat behind the wheel of a red Ferrari. She sunbathed on the bow of a snow-white yacht in the middle of the Persian Gulf. She dined at the Burj Al Arab restaurant, where the bill started at $500 per person. She wore Versace dresses and Chanel bags. She drank champagne on terraces overlooking fountains. The life of a successful, wealthy girl who made it on her own in the city of opportunity. It was all a lie. A carefully orchestrated lie that required money, time, and constant tension. Victoria didn't own any of these things. She rented them. In Dubai, there is an entire industry serving influencers and those who want to create the illusion of luxury for social media. Victoria found several agencies that provided such services. The penthouse cost $200 per hour to shoot. The owner of the apartment allowed her to come when he was not at home. He gave her an hour. Victoria brought a suitcase with clothes and took a series of photos in different outfits by the panoramic windows, on the balcony, and in the living room with designer furniture. 40 to 50 shots per hour. That was enough for a month's worth of content. Supercars were rented in parking lots. $150 for a half-hour photo shoot with a red Ferrari or a yellow Lamborghini. The owners of these cars were often ordinary people who had bought the cars on credit and were thus paying off their loans. Victoria didn't get behind the wheel. She just posed next to or inside the car in the shopping center parking lot. The cameraman took pictures at the right angle so that it wasn't obvious that the car was just parked among other cars. Yachts were more expensive. A 3-hour rental of a small yacht with a captain cost $400. Victoria teamed up with other female bloggers, and they split the cost between 3 or 4 of them. They went out into the bay and took photos against the backdrop of the horizon. Each got their share of content. The main thing was not to show the other girls in the frame, so as to create the illusion of a private outing. Clothes and accessories were rented from special services. A Dior dress for a day cost $80. A Hermes bag cost $50 for an evening. Jewelry, watches, and sunglasses from luxury brands could all be rented. Victoria would wear them, take photos, and return them the next day. In the closet of her real apartment hung jeans from the market and t-shirts that cost $10. Restaurants were the easiest part of the fake content. Victoria would go to expensive establishments, order one dessert for $20 and a coffee. She would sit there for 2 hours, taking dozens of photos of the interior, her plate, her glass, and the view from the window. She would post them with a caption about a wonderful dinner, even though she had only eaten a pastry. Then she would go to a nearby diner and have a $5 shawarma for dinner. This double life brought in income. Advertisers saw the number of subscribers and the level of audience engagement. They didn't check whether Victoria was really rich. What mattered to them was that 850,000 people were watching her. Clothing, cosmetics, jewelry, and travel service brands offered paid placements, from $300 to $1,000 per post, depending on the conditions. Victoria earned between $3,000 and $5,000 a month from advertising. She deducted the cost of renting props, about $1,200 a month. There was enough left over to save. The money wasn't for her. Her mother, Irina Sokolova, 52 years old, lived in a small town near Moscow. She was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer 2 years ago. Free treatment at a state hospital included chemotherapy and standard procedures, but doctors said that a complete cure would require surgery at a private clinic and targeted therapy. The cost was $80,000. Insurance did not cover it. Victoria's father died 10 years ago. She had no other relatives with money. Victoria sent her mother $2,000 to $3,000 every month. Over 2 years, she saved up $58,000. She needed another $22,000 for the operation. Her mother waited. Her condition worsened, but she held on. She called her daughter every week to ask how things were going in Dubai. Victoria told her about her job at the mall, but never mentioned Instagram or her fake life. Her mother thought her daughter was just good at saving her salary. Victoria's Instagram profile was simply her first and last name in Latin letters. The description read, "Entrepreneur, travel lover, Dubai." There were no direct statements about wealth, but the photos spoke for themselves. The comments under the posts were enthusiastic. Girls wrote that they dreamed of such a life, asked for advice on how to move to Dubai, how to achieve success. Victoria responded vaguely, "Work on yourself. Believe in your dream. Don't give up." She never revealed the mechanics of creating her content. She had several blogger friends who did the same thing. They would meet in cheap cafes in Sharjah, discuss new locations for shoots, and share contacts for rental agencies. It was their secret community. No one talked about it publicly. Everyone understood that exposure would destroy their accounts and income. They supported each other, but competed for advertisers. Victoria spent an average of 2 days a month creating content. These were weekends when she wasn't working at the mall. She rented all the locations for 1 day, took a huge number of photos and videos, and then stretched the publication over 4 weeks. 1 post a day, sometimes 2. Stories several times a day, reposts of other people's content, short videos from the archive, screenshots of messages from brands. This created the illusion of a constantly active life, although in reality, Victoria spent most of her time in the store or in her studio in Sharjah. Khaled Al Maktoum appeared in her direct messages late one evening in October. Victoria had already gone to bed after her shift and was checking her phone before turning off the light. She saw a new message from a verified account. The profile showed a man in his mid-40s wearing traditional Emirati clothing. He had 320,000 followers. His posts were about real estate, construction projects, and meetings with other sheikhs and businessmen. The description said, "CEO of a construction company, owner of several properties in Dubai." The message was short, "I want to meet a girl of my level." Victoria knew that many bloggers received such messages. Wealthy Emiratis often wrote to girls with beautiful profiles. Usually, it ended with offers to meet for money or become a kept mistress. Victoria never responded to such messages. She was not involved in escort services and did not want to get involved with that world. But this time, she hesitated. She looked at Khaled's profile more closely. He really did look like a wealthy developer. Photos from the opening ceremonies of residential complexes, handshakes with people in business suits, a post about the completion of a $2 billion tower. He wasn't just a rich tourist. He was a man with real status in the city. Victoria thought about her mother, about the $22,000 that were still missing, about how long it would take her to save $2,000 or $3,000 a month. Another year, maybe more. Her mother might not wait that long. The doctors said that with each passing month, the chances of successful treatment were decreasing. She replied to Khaled the next day, "Thank you for your interest in my profile." She was careful with her wording, not flirting openly. Khaled replied quickly. He asked who she was, what she did in Dubai, where she was from. Victoria wrote what she had long rehearsed in her head in case of such questions from subscribers. She is an entrepreneur, consulting for Russian companies wishing to enter the UAE market. She has been living in Dubai for 3 years. She was born in Moscow. Khaled asked if he could invite her to dinner. Victoria agreed, but asked for a week to prepare, citing her busy work schedule. In reality, she needed time to prepare. She understood that meeting a real wealthy person required a different level of preparation than taking photos in rented locations. Victoria spent 2 days studying Khaled's profile and information about him on the internet. She found articles in local business publications about his company. It specialized in the construction of luxury residential complexes on the coast. Khaled was the son of the influential Al Maktoum clan, although not from the main branch of the ruling family. He had 3 brothers, all of whom were involved in business. Khaled himself graduated from university in London with a degree in civil engineering. He was married 20 years ago, but is now divorced. He has no children. He lives in a villa on Palm Jumeirah. She realized that she was dealing with a serious man who would not be satisfied with superficial conversation. She needed a convincing story. Victoria decided to stick to the story of being the daughter of a wealthy Russian businessman. This explained her social media profile and gave her a reason to act confidently. She thought through the details. Her father is in the oil business, lives between Moscow and London. They are on good terms, but she prefers independence and is building her career separately from the family business. 3 days before the meeting, Victoria spent her last $800 savings on preparation. She booked a room at the Jumeirah Beach Hotel for 1 night for $250, so she would have an address for the taxi if Khaled offered to pick her up. She rented a black Dolce & Gabbana cocktail dress for $150 for the evening. She bought a new pair of shoes for $100 because rented shoes always looked worn. She spent $200 on a hairdresser and makeup artist. She set aside the rest of her money for taxis and unexpected expenses. Nobu Restaurant was located in the Atlantis Hotel on Palm Jumeirah. Victoria arrived by taxi, paying $30 for the ride. She got out in front of the entrance, straightened her dress, and took a deep breath. Her heart was beating fast. She had been photographed many times in expensive places, but she had never really been there, never dined there, never socialized with people from that circle. Khaled was waiting at a table on the terrace overlooking the bay. He stood up when she was brought over. He was tall, about 185 centimeters, wearing a traditional white kandura and black gutra. His face was stern, but with a warm smile. He had a firm handshake. He invited her to sit opposite him. The waiter brought the menu. Victoria opened it and was taken aback for a second when she saw the prices. Appetizers started at $40. Main courses ranged from $80 to $150. Khaled told her to order whatever she wanted. Victoria chose sushi and sashimi, based on the names she had heard before. Khaled ordered a steak and a bottle of white wine for $300. They started talking. He asked about her life, her family, her plans. Victoria answered confidently, using her prepared story. She talked about consulting, the difficulties of doing business between 2 countries, and her love for Dubai. She mentioned her father in passing as a successful but busy man with whom she had a good but distant relationship. Khaled listened attentively. He talked about his projects and showed photos of towers under construction on his phone. He talked about plans to build a new residential complex on the coast worth $1.5 billion. Victoria nodded, asked questions, and showed interest. She was a good listener. Her job at the store had taught her how to communicate with people and find common ground. Dinner lasted 3 hours. The bill came to $850. Khaled paid with a black credit card without even looking at the amount. He walked Victoria to the taxi and asked for her phone number. She gave it to him. He said he would like to meet again. Victoria replied that she was also glad to have met him. In the taxi back to the hotel, she breathed a sigh of relief. The evening had gone well. Khaled believed her. She had played her role convincingly. Now the question was how far this game could go, and what she was willing to do for her mother's money. Khaled texted Victoria the next day. The message arrived at noon, when she was standing behind the store counter between two customers. Her phone vibrated in her uniform pocket. She couldn't check it, but she felt a growing tension. During her lunch break, she read it. "Thanks for the wonderful evening. I'd like to show you my new project. It might be interesting from your consulting perspective." Victoria replied an hour later when she had a free moment. She wrote that she would be happy to take a look. Khaled suggested meeting at the construction site in 3 days. Victoria took a day off work, citing a doctor's appointment. Her manager reluctantly agreed, reminding her that time off would be deducted from her salary. The construction site was in the Dubai Marina area. Khaled sent a car, a black Mercedes with a driver. Victoria put on a business suit, rented for $50 a day, and low-heeled shoes. She arrived at the site, where the first floors of a huge complex were already being built. Khaled met her wearing a helmet and a reflective vest, showed her the blueprints, explained the concept of the building, and talked about the technologies. Victoria listened, asking questions she had found on the internet the day before about the construction of high-rise buildings. After the tour, they went to lunch. Khaled chose a restaurant on the waterfront. Over lunch, the conversation became more personal. He asked why she wasn't married. Victoria replied that she had been busy with her career and hadn't met the right person. Khaled nodded and said he understood. His marriage had fallen apart because his wife did not share his ambitions. She wanted a quiet family life while he was building a business. Victoria listened sympathetically. He added that he was looking for a woman who understood the business world and could be a partner, not just a housewife. Victoria felt that he was evaluating her as a potential partner. It was unexpected. She thought he was looking for entertainment or a short-term relationship. But Khaled was talking about serious things. He mentioned that at his age and in his position, reputation was important, that the woman by his side had to match his status. Victoria understood the hint. Over the next 2 weeks, they saw each other 4 times. Khaled invited her to restaurants, evening walks along the beach, and yacht shows at the marina. He was a gentleman, didn't rush things, didn't demand intimacy. He gave her flowers after every meeting. Victoria always came up with a reason why he couldn't pick her up from her home. Sometimes she said she was meeting a friend nearby, other times that she had a business meeting near the restaurant. Khaled didn't insist. She gave him the address of the hotel where she stayed overnight after each date, paying for it with her meager savings. The costs of maintaining her image were growing. Each meeting required new clothes, a taxi, and sometimes a night in a hotel. Victoria spent everything she earned from advertising on Instagram. She had nothing left to send to her mother. Her mother called and asked when the next transfer would be. Victoria promised it would be at the end of the month, making up excuses about delays in payments from clients. A month after they met, Khaled invited Victoria to dinner at his villa. He said he wanted to show her the house where he lived so she could get to know his life better. Victoria agreed, although she felt uneasy inside. Private property meant less control over the situation. The villa on Palm Jumeirah stood on the shore, with its own pier and beach. It was a 2-story building with a white facade, huge windows, and a flat roof with a terrace. The security guard opened the gate, and the car drove up the driveway. Khaled met Victoria at the entrance. He showed her around the house. The living room had 6-meter-high ceilings, marble floors, dark wood furniture. The paintings on the walls were not reproductions, but originals. Victoria didn't know much about art, but she could see that they were expensive. The kitchen was the size of her studio in Sharjah. The pool in the backyard opened directly onto the bay, creating the illusion of endless water. Dinner was served on the terrace by the pool. The chef prepared 4 courses. The waiter poured the wine. Victoria sat and realized that this was no longer a game of renting props for an hour. This was the real life of a real rich man, which she had entered by deception. After dinner, Khaled took out a small box. He opened it, and inside was a bracelet, gold and diamonds. Victoria froze. Khaled said he wanted to give her a gift because she was special. He put the bracelet on her wrist. Victoria thanked him, tried to refuse, saying it was too much, but Khaled insisted. He said that a woman of his status should wear appropriate jewelry. Victoria returned to her studio late at night. She took off the bracelet, turned on the lamp, and examined it. On the inside was the Cartier stamp. She found a similar model on the brand's website. The price was $25,000. Victoria's head spun. It was the money she needed for her mother's operation, almost the entire amount. For the next 2 days, she thought about what to do. The bracelet lay in a desk drawer, wrapped in a handkerchief. Victoria knew she could sell it. There was a market for reselling luxury items in Dubai, but that would mean betraying Khaled's trust. On the other hand, their entire relationship was based on deception. She was already deceiving him every day by pretending to be someone she was not. Victoria found a dealer through her acquaintances. The man agreed to meet her at a cafe. He looked at the bracelet, checked its authenticity, and offered $15,000. Victoria wanted more, but the dealer explained that without the documents and box, the resale value would drop by 40%. Plus his commission, $15,000 or nothing. Victoria agreed. The money was transferred to her account 2 hours later. She sent the entire amount to her mother that same day. She called in the evening. Her mother cried with joy. She said that now there was enough money for the operation and she could make an appointment at the clinic. She asked where her daughter had gotten the money. Victoria replied that she had closed a big contract with a client and received a bonus. Her mother blessed her, thanked her, and said she was proud of her daughter. Victoria hung up and sat in the silence of the studio. She realized that she had crossed the line. Now she wasn't just creating fake content for social media. She was stealing from someone who trusted her. But she didn't feel particularly guilty. She felt tired and relieved. Her mother would get treatment. That was the main thing. Khaled didn't ask about the bracelet at their next meetings. Victoria didn't wear it when they met, explaining that she was afraid of losing such a valuable item and only wore it on special occasions. Khaled accepted her explanation. Their relationship continued to develop. He called every day, asked about her affairs, and sent her good morning messages. 2 weeks later, Khaled gave her a bag, a Hermes Birkin, black leather, gold hardware. Victoria recognized the model. She had seen it in rental services for $50 a day, but always considered it too recognizable for her fake content. Now she had the real thing. Khaled said he saw it in the store and thought of her. Victoria hugged him and kissed him on the cheek. It was the first time she had shown physical affection. Khaled smiled and hugged her back. The bag went to the reseller 3 days later. Victoria received $27,000. The original price was $45,000. She sent her mother another $10,000 to pay for additional procedures after the operation. She kept the rest for herself as a safety net. For the first time in 3 years, she had savings. Her mother had the operation at the end of November. Victoria couldn't fly to Russia because Khaled was expecting her at an important business dinner, where he wanted to introduce her to his friends. She spoke to her mother via video link from her hospital room. Her mother looked weak, but the doctors said that everything had gone well. She needed recovery and a course of targeted therapy. The prognosis was good. Victoria cried after the call. She cried out of relief and from understanding the price she had to pay. The business lunch took place at a private club in downtown. Khaled introduced Victoria as his girlfriend to 3 couples. The men were his business partners, and the women were their wives. Everyone spoke English, discussing real estate, investments, and holiday plans. Victoria kept up the conversation, smiled, and answered questions about her work with memorized phrases about consulting. One of the women asked where Victoria had studied. Victoria named the Higher School of Economics in Moscow. The woman nodded and said she had heard of the university. After dinner, in the car, Khaled said that she had made an excellent impression. His friends approved. Victoria realized that she had been tested. Khaled was checking whether she could exist in his social circle. She passed the test. In December, the gifts became more frequent. A Rolex watch, diamond earrings, a Max Mara coat, Clive Christian perfume costing $1,200 a bottle. Victoria accepted everything, thanked him, and then sold it through resellers. Money flowed like water. She sent her mother to therapy and saved the rest. In 2 months of dating Khaled, she earned more than she had in 2 years working at the mall and on her fake Instagram account combined. But a new problem arose. Khaled wanted more intimacy. He hinted that he wanted Victoria to spend more time at his villa. He suggested she stay the night. Victoria refused, making up excuses. Early meetings at work, feeling unwell, tiredness. Khaled was patient, but she could see the questions in his eyes. He was beginning to wonder about her constant refusals. He also offered to pick her up from home several times. He wanted to see where she lived. Victoria avoided answering every time. She said that her apartment was being renovated, that her friend was living with her temporarily, and it was inconvenient to bring guests, that it was better to meet in restaurants, where it was more romantic. Khaled accepted her excuses, but Victoria felt that his patience was not unlimited. In mid-December, Khaled made a proposal that left Victoria at a dead end. He said he wanted her to move in with him, that they had a serious relationship, and it was time to take the next step. The villa was large, and she would have her own room if she wanted personal space. But he wanted to see her every day, wake up together, fall asleep together, build a future. Victoria froze. It was a trap. She couldn't move in with him because then the deception would be revealed. She didn't have the things a rich girl would have. She had no wardrobe to bring with her, no personal items, no photos with her family, no documents to back up her story. Her studio in Sharjah contained cheap jeans and an empty refrigerator. Moving would mean the end of the game. Victoria asked for time to think. She said it was a big step and she needed to weigh everything up. Khaled agreed, but added that he didn't want to wait long. He would be turning 47 in January and wanted to celebrate his birthday with the woman he loved by his side. Victoria nodded and promised to give him an answer after the holidays. She returned home in a panic. She lay on her bed, stared at the ceiling, and tried to find a way out. She could confess everything, but that would mean losing Khaled, probably a scandal, and possibly legal problems. The UAE has strict rules about fraud. She had sold his gifts worth tens of thousands of dollars. That could be classified as theft. She could disappear, leave Dubai, and return to Russia. But then she would have to give up her job, her account, everything she had built. Plus, Khaled knew her name and had seen her face thousands of times in photos and in person. He could find her through his connections. The third option was to continue the game, deepening the deception. To come up with a new story that would explain the absence of her belongings during the move. Victoria chose the third option because she saw no other way out that would not destroy everything. A week later, she met with Khaled and said she was ready to move. But there was a problem. She was in a fight with her father, a serious fight over her unwillingness to work in the family business. Her father wanted her to return to Russia and take a position in his company. Victoria refused, wanting independence. Her father, in a rage, blocked all her accounts that he controlled. He took the keys to the apartment he had bought in her name. She now lives with a friend, using the few things she had at the time of the quarrel. Khaled listened with a serious expression. He asked how long ago it had happened. Victoria said a month ago. That's why she didn't want to burden him with her problems and tried to solve them herself. Khaled hugged her. He said she was doing the right thing by standing up for her independence, that he would help her, that she would have everything she needed. The next day, Khaled invited Victoria to go shopping. They spent the whole day in shopping malls. He bought her clothes, shoes, and accessories, dresses, suits, jeans, tops, underwear, cosmetics, perfume. He didn't ask about the prices, he just told the sales assistants what to pack. At first, Victoria tried to stop him, saying that it was too much, but Khaled said that he wanted to provide her with everything she needed to feel comfortable in her new home. They spent $200,000 in one day. Victoria couldn't believe what was happening. It was more money than she had ever seen in her entire life. Boxes and bags filled the entire trunk of the SUV. Khaled ordered another car for transport. In the evening, they brought everything to the villa. Khaled showed Victoria the room he had prepared for her. It was a large bedroom on the second floor with a dressing room and a bathroom. Victoria arranged her purchases on the shelves. Khaled watched from the doorway, smiling. He said he was happy to see her there, that now it was her home too. Victoria officially moved in 3 days later. She had no belongings to move from her friend's apartment. Only one suitcase with a minimum of personal items that she had collected from her studio in Sharjah. Khaled asked no questions. He accepted the situation as it was. The first few days in the villa were strange. Victoria woke up in a huge bed under silk sheets. She had breakfast on the terrace, where the chef cooked whatever she wanted. She spent her days by the pool or in her room because she had quit her job at the mall. She told her manager that she was leaving the country. In the evening, Khaled would come home from work. They would have dinner together, talk, watch movies in the home theater. This was the life Victoria showed on Instagram. Now she was really living it. But there was no joy. There was a constant fear of exposure. Every conversation with Khaled, every question about the past, every mention of family caused tension. She lied constantly, memorized lies, built new layers of deception on top of old ones. Khaled became more serious in his intentions. He talked about the future. He mentioned the possibility of marriage. He wanted to introduce Victoria to his family, his brothers, his mother. It was frightening. The family would ask questions, check things out. Victoria postponed the meetings, citing a quarrel with her father, saying that it was awkward to meet his family when she was in conflict with her own. Khaled offered to help her make up with her father. He said he wanted to talk to her father, to explain that they were in a serious relationship, to ask for his blessing. He asked for her father's phone number. Victoria was confused. She said her father wouldn't talk to him, that he was too stubborn, that it would take time. Khaled insisted. He said that as a man, he understood the importance of talking to the girl's father, that it was the right thing to do according to tradition. Victoria gave him a non-existent number. She said she would try to talk to him herself first, to prepare the ground. Khaled agreed to wait a week. Victoria understood that time was running out. She had backed herself into a corner with her own lies. The further the relationship went, the harder it was to get out without consequences. She tried to find a way out. She thought about hiring someone to play the role of her father on the phone, but she understood that Khaled would want a face-to-face meeting. She thought about confessing, but was afraid of the reaction. Khaled was an influential man in Dubai. She had deceived him and sold his gifts for a lot of money. In this country, people were sent to prison for less. At best, she would be deported. Victoria continued to live in the villa, playing the role of a loving girlfriend, smiling, kissing Khaled, and thanking him for his gifts. Inside, her anxiety grew. She slept poorly, waking up from nightmares. She lost her appetite. Khaled noticed and asked if everything was okay. Victoria said she was worried about her mother, who was undergoing treatment. It was true, but not the whole truth. Her mother called once a week. She felt better after the operation. The doctors were pleased with the results. The therapy was helping. she asked when Victoria would come to visit. Victoria promised to come for New Year's, but she knew she wouldn't be able to. Khaled planned to spend the holidays together at the villa, to throw a party for friends, to introduce Victoria as his future wife. At the end of December, an event occurred that hastened the denouement. Khaled said at dinner that he wanted to surprise Victoria. His mother was coming to visit them tomorrow. She wanted to meet her son's girlfriend. Victoria froze with a fork in her hand. She asked why so suddenly. Khaled replied that his mother had learned about their relationship from his brothers and insisted on meeting her. She was a traditional woman, and it was important for her to approve of her son's choice. Victoria didn't sleep all night. She knew that Khaled's mother would ask questions to test her. Traditional Emirati families carefully select brides for their sons, especially in families of high standing. Victoria did not know all the rules of behavior, did not speak Arabic, and did not understand the culture on a deep level. She was a Russian girl, pretending to be a rich heiress. The meeting took place the next day in the villa's living room. Khaled's mother arrived with one of her brother's wives. Both women were dressed in traditional black abayas. They sat on the sofa and drank tea prepared by the housekeeper. Victoria wore a modest dress, her hair was tied back in a bun, and she wore minimal makeup. She tried to look respectable. The conversation was conducted through Khaled, who translated from Arabic and English. The mother asked about Victoria's family, what her father did, where her mother lived, whether she had any brothers or sisters. Victoria answered cautiously. She said that her father was a businessman, her mother was a housewife, and she had no other children. Khaled's mother wanted to know what kind of business. Victoria said oil. Her mother nodded and asked more questions. Victoria answered vaguely, saying that her father did not tell her the details of his work because of a quarrel. Her brother's wife was silent, but watched closely. Victoria felt her appraising gaze. After an hour of conversation, the women got up and said goodbye. Khaled walked them to the car. He returned with a smile. He said that everything had gone well. His mother approved of Victoria. She called her a well-mannered and beautiful girl, but she added that she would like to meet Victoria's family before they got closer. Victoria realized that the trap was closing. Meeting the family was impossible. The oligarch father did not exist. Her mother was recovering from surgery in Russia and knew nothing about her daughter's fake life. Victoria couldn't arrange a meeting without revealing the deception. Khaled said he would ask his mother to wait until spring. He would give Victoria time to reconcile with her father. But in the spring, they would have to arrange a meeting between the families. It was a tradition before the engagement. Victoria nodded in agreement. Inside, panic was growing. She understood that this couldn't go on for long. On New Year's Eve, they celebrated together on the terrace by the pool. Khaled ordered fireworks over the villa. He opened a bottle of champagne worth $1,000. At midnight, he kissed Victoria and said that it was the best year of his life, that she had changed everything, that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. Victoria smiled, hugged him, and said the same words in return. She looked at the fireworks over the bay and thought about when it would all come crashing down. Not if, but when. Because such deceptions don't last forever. Sooner or later, the truth comes out. The only question was how exactly it would happen, and what the consequences would be. She didn't know that Khaled had already started checking things out, that on New Year's Eve, he had called a private investigator he used to check out business partners. He asked him to find out about Victoria Sokolova. Full name, date of birth, passport information. Khaled said he was planning to get married and wanted to be sure he knew everything about his future wife. The detective promised results in a week. The detective started work on January 2nd. His name was Karim, a former police officer who had opened a private agency after retiring. He specialized in vetting business partners and conducting investigations for wealthy clients. Khaled had been his regular customer for the past 5 years. Karim checked potential investors, contractors, and competitors. Checking clients' personal lives was rare, but not unheard of. Karim received Victoria's full details from Khaled. Her first and last name and date of birth were taken from the passport she had shown when registering as a guest at the villa. Karim began with basic checks. Victoria's visa turned out to be a work visa, sponsored by the Dubai Mall. This immediately raised questions. The daughter of an oligarch with a salesperson's work visa? Karim dug deeper. He found Victoria's registration address through the Immigration Service database, a studio in Sharjah, a rented apartment. Karim went there on the second day of his investigation. The building was an ordinary residential complex for middle-class workers. Nothing luxurious. He talked to the security guard, showed him a photo of Victoria, and asked about the tenant of this apartment. The security guard confirmed that the girl had been living there for 3 years, renting a studio apartment. A normal tenant, quiet, paying on time. Karim contacted her employer through an official request. He received confirmation that Victoria Sokolova had worked as a sales consultant in a cosmetics store until the end of December. Her salary was $1,200 per month. She resigned of her own accord on December 28th. There were no signs of a consulting business or work with Russian companies. Karim's next step was to check Victoria's Instagram profile. 850,000 followers, hundreds of photos of a luxurious lifestyle. He began to analyze the geolocations and details of the photos. Some of the photos were taken in apartments that were rented out for short-term stays. Karim found ads for the same apartments on daily rental websites. He compared the interiors. They matched. The cars in the photos also aroused suspicion. Karim noticed that the Ferrari and Lamborghini were always photographed in parking lots, never in motion. He contacted several companies that provide supercar photo shoot services. At one of the companies, the manager confirmed that Victoria was a client. She rented cars for photo shoots at a rate of $150 per half hour. The last time was in October, before she met Khaled. Karim found clothing and accessory rental agencies. 2 of them had Victoria Sokolova listed as a regular customer in their databases. She rented designer dresses, bags, and jewelry. The managers remembered her because she was a careful customer who always returned items on time and in good condition. In 5 days, Karim pieced together the whole picture. Victoria Sokolova was an ordinary middle-class girl who worked as a salesperson for minimum wage, lived in a cheap studio apartment, and created a fake image on social media by renting props. No oligarch father, no consulting business, no quarrels with her family, and no frozen accounts. It was all a fabrication. Karim prepared a 30-page report. He included photos of the studio in Sharjah, screenshots of correspondence with rental agencies, confirmation of employment at the shopping center, extracts from the Immigration Service database, a comparative analysis of photos on Instagram and location rental ads. He also added financial information. Victoria's bank account showed regular transfers to Russia for large sums of money. Over the past 2 months, she had sent $42,000. On January 7th, Karim met with Khaled in his office. He handed him the folder with the report. Khaled read silently, flipping through the pages, his face turned to stone. When he reached the end, he closed the folder and placed it on the table. He sat silently for several minutes. Karim waited. Khaled finally spoke. He asked if Karim was sure about the information. Karim replied that everything had been double-checked and that there was a documentary evidence. Khaled dismissed the detective, asking him not to tell anyone about the investigation. Karim promised confidentiality. Left alone in the office, Khaled looked out the window at the city. He realized that he had been living a lie for the last 3 months. The girl he had fallen in love with, whom he trusted, whom he was going to marry, turned out to be a fraud. She had used him as a source of money. She had sold all his gifts. She played her role so convincingly that he believed her completely. For Khaled, it wasn't just deception. It was humiliation. In Emirati culture, honor and reputation are of paramount importance. He had introduced Victoria to his friends and mother and talked about their engagement. Everyone thought he was dating the daughter of a Russian oligarch, a worthy match. Now, if the truth came out, he would become a laughingstock, a man who had been led around by the nose by a simple saleswoman. Khaled felt rage, not so much because of the money. The gifts were worth about $100,000, which was not a critical amount for him. Because of the humiliation. Because she dared to think he was stupid, easily deceived. Because every kiss, every word of love was a lie, calculated for profit. Khaled decided there had to be a confrontation. He wanted to see her face when he showed her the evidence. He wanted to hear her try to explain. He wanted her to understand that she couldn't deceive him with impunity. He arrived at the villa in the evening. Victoria greeted him as usual, kissed him, and asked about his day. Khaled behaved normally, smiled, and hugged her. He said he was tired and wanted to spend a quiet evening at home. Victoria suggested dinner on the terrace. Khaled agreed. They had dinner and talked about their plans for the weekend. Khaled suggested opening a bottle of champagne to celebrate the start of the year. Victoria agreed. They sat by the pool. January evenings in Dubai are cool, with temperatures around 20 degrees. The heated pool water gave off a light mist. The lights of the villa were reflected on the surface. Khaled took out his phone and said he wanted to show Victoria something interesting. He connected his phone to a large screen mounted on the terrace wall for watching movies outdoors. Documents appeared on the screen. Victoria didn't immediately understand what she was seeing. Then she figured it out. A photo of her studio in Sharjah, a contract with a shopping center to work as a salesperson, screenshots of correspondence with car rental agencies and photo shoot locations. The blood drained from her face. The glass of champagne almost fell from her hand. She looked at Khaled. He was looking at her with a cold gaze she had never seen before. He was flipping through the pages of the report on the screen. Each page was a blow. The evidence of her deception was building up into an irrefutable picture. Victoria tried to say something, but her voice stuck in her throat. Khaled spoke calmly, without raising his voice. He said he had hired a detective to check her out, that he wanted to be sure before getting married, that he had received a full report on everything, about her real job, her real apartment, about renting props for fake photos, about selling his gifts. He knew everything. Victoria began to cry. She said she could explain. Khaled replied coldly that he was ready to listen. Through her tears, Victoria told him about her mother, about the cancer, about the operation that cost $80,000, about how she had no other way to get the money, that she didn't want to deceive him, but it was the only way to save her mother. Khaled listened silently. When she finished, he asked why she hadn't been honest with him, why she hadn't told him about the problem, asked for help. Victoria replied that they had only just met. She couldn't ask a stranger for that kind of money. Khaled asked if it was okay to deceive a stranger and use him as an ATM. Victoria was silent. She understood that there were no excuses. She had indeed used him. She could have asked for help honestly when they became closer, but she chose the path of deception and selling gifts. Khaled stood up and paced the terrace. He said that she had humiliated him. She had made him look like a fool in front of himself. She had made him introduce her to his mother and friends as a respectable woman, even though she was a fraud. He asked if she understood that in the UAE, people go to prison for such things, that selling gifts obtained by deception qualifies as fraud, that he could go to the police and she would spend several years in prison, then be deported with a ban on re-entry. Victoria fell to her knees, begging him not to do this. She said she would return everything, that she would find a way, that she would do anything. Khaled looked down at her. He said she had no money to return, that she had sent all the money to Russia, that there was nothing to return. Victoria sobbed, repeating that she would find a way. She would ask her mother to sell the apartment. She would borrow from someone. She would work and pay off the debt for years. Khaled said he wasn't interested in money. He was interested in justice. She had to be punished for what she had done. Victoria desperately tried to get up to leave. She said she would leave right now, disappear, and he would never see her again. Khaled blocked her way. He said she wasn't going anywhere until they decided what to do next. He called the security guards who were on duty at the villa gate. 2 men came out onto the terrace. Khaled ordered them not to let Victoria leave the villa. Victoria panicked and rushed to the exit. The guards stopped her, not roughly, but firmly. They brought her back to the terrace. Victoria screamed that they were holding her against her will, that it was illegal. Khaled said he just wanted to finish the conversation, that she was a guest in his house and had to listen. He continued talking. He said that the problem was not just about money. The problem was that she had destroyed his trust, that because of her, he would doubt people for the rest of his life, that she had stolen not only gifts, but also his belief that people could be honest. He asked how she could look at herself in the mirror, knowing that she lived a lie every day. Victoria stopped crying. She said quietly that he was right, that she was a terrible person, that she deserved to be punished, but she asked him to consider that she had not done it for herself, but for her mother, that any daughter would have done the same in her place. Khaled replied that any honest daughter would have found an honest way. She took out a loan, applied to charitable foundations, asked the state for help, but Victoria chose deception. The conversation lasted over an hour. Victoria no longer tried to run away. She sat on a deck chair by the pool, hugging her knees. Khaled paced back and forth, saying everything he had to say. At some point, his anger reached its peak. He shouted that no one had the right to humiliate his family, that she had disgraced his name, that she had to pay for it. Victoria stood up and said she understood his feelings, but she had to leave. She tried to walk past him. Khaled grabbed her arm and stopped her with a jerk. Victoria tried to break free. A struggle ensued between them. It wasn't violent, but it was physical. Victoria tried to free herself. Khaled held her back. She scratched his hands and tried to push him away. He held her tight. They were standing at the edge of the pool. Victoria made a sudden movement, trying to pull her hand away. Khaled instinctively squeezed harder. Victoria lost her balance. Her foot slipped on the wet tiles at the edge. She fell backward. Khaled tried to hold her, but the momentum was too strong. Victoria fell into the pool. The water was warm, but the impact was unexpected. Victoria sank completely and choked. She came up coughing, trying to stay afloat. Her dress was wet and pulling her down. She was not a good swimmer. Her panic intensified. She floundered, choking on water. Khaled stood at the edge, watching. He didn't jump into the water. He didn't reach out his hand. He just watched her struggle. Victoria screamed, begged for help. She tried to swim to the edge, but her panic interfered with her coordination. She went under, came up, went under again. Her strength was running out. The guards stood at a distance. They saw what was happening but did not move. They waited for Khaled's command. The command did not come. Khaled watched Victoria drown. There was cold fury in his eyes. He did not help. Perhaps he thought she would swim out on her own. Perhaps he wanted her to be truly afraid. Perhaps he wasn't thinking at all, just watching. Victoria sank under the water for the last time. She didn't come up. The surface of the pool became smooth. Khaled watched for another minute. Then he turned and went into the house. He told the guards that the evening was over and they could leave. The guards exchanged glances but asked no questions. They left for the gate. In the morning, the maid came to work at 8 o'clock. She started cleaning the terrace as usual. She saw something in the pool. She came closer and realized it was a body. She screamed. The gardener, who was working in the yard, ran over. They called the police. The first squad arrived 15 minutes later. The officers pulled the body out of the water. Victoria was lying face down, her hair disheveled, her dress torn. Her skin was pale. The police pronounced her dead and cordoned off the area with tape. They called in the investigation team and the medical examiner. Khaled came out of the bedroom when he heard the sirens. He went down to the terrace and saw the police. He pretended to be shocked. He said he didn't understand how it had happened, that yesterday they had had a peaceful dinner, drank champagne, and he had gone to bed around midnight. Victoria said she would stay a little longer. She wanted to sit by the pool. He suggested that she had drunk too much, lost her balance, and fallen into the water. A tragic accident. The investigator asked questions. Khaled answered calmly and confidently. He said that they were in a good relationship and were planning to get engaged. There were no conflicts, just a romantic evening that ended in tragedy. The investigator recorded his testimony. He asked about the surveillance cameras. Khaled replied that the system had not been working for the last 2 days, and they were waiting for a repairman. The investigator nodded and made a note. The medical examiner arrived an hour later. He examined the body on the spot. The preliminary cause of death was drowning, but there were bruises on the body's arms and abrasions on the wrists. The expert noted this in the report. He told the investigator that a full examination was needed to determine whether these injuries were sustained before the fall into the water or during the drowning. The body was taken to the morgue. The investigator finished examining the scene. He told Khaled that the investigation would continue and asked him to stay in touch. Khaled promised his full cooperation. The information about the death did not make it into the local media. In Dubai, news about incidents involving influential families is strictly controlled. There was only a dry entry in the police report. The Russian consulate learned of the death of a Russian citizen 3 days later when the police sent a standard notification. The consul arranged a meeting with the investigator. He demanded details. The investigator gave the official version. An accident. The girl fell into the pool while intoxicated and drowned. The consul asked about the bruises on her body. The investigator replied that they were probably caused by the fall or attempts to get out of the water. The consul was not satisfied with the explanation. He demanded an independent examination. He contacted Victoria's mother in Russia. He informed her of her daughter's death. At first, the mother did not believe it. Then she burst into tears. She demanded that her daughter's body be returned so that she could be buried in Russia. The consul promised to arrange for repatriation, but first the investigation had to be completed. A Russian pathologist from the consulate was given permission to attend the autopsy. He examined the body carefully. He confirmed drowning as the cause of death, but he noticed the nature of the bruises on her arms. They were consistent with someone holding her wrists tightly. The abrasions on her skin indicated a struggle. There were also traces of pressure on the neck, barely noticeable but present. The pathologist compiled a separate report. He indicated that the death may not have been accidental, that the physical evidence suggests a conflict before the fall into the water, that it is necessary to question witnesses and verify the testimony of the villa owner. He forwarded the report to the consul. The consul sent a note of protest to the Dubai police. He demanded that the investigation be expanded, that Khaled be questioned in more detail, and that witnesses be found. The police replied that the investigation was being conducted properly, that the villa owner's testimony had been verified, that there was no reason to suspect foul play. The consul understood that the case would not progress any further. Khaled Al Maktoum belonged to an influential family. His connections reached the highest levels of power in the emirate. The police would not aggressively investigate the death of a foreign woman at his villa without ironclad evidence of a crime. Khaled's family contacted Victoria's mother through a lawyer. They offered compensation of $500,000 for the tragic loss. They also promised to pay all the costs of repatriating the body and the funeral, in exchange for closing all questions and claims. Victoria's mother initially refused. She said she wanted justice, not money. But the lawyers explained that it was impossible to prove anything. The cameras were not working. There were no witnesses. The medical examination showed drowning, and the bruises could have been caused by a fall. No criminal case would be opened. The most she would get was a protracted investigation that would end with the same result. The compensation would allow her to finish the treatment without worrying about money. The mother accepted the offer. She signed the document stating that she had no claims. The money was transferred to her account. Victoria's body was taken to Russia. The funeral was attended by a small circle of relatives and friends. Her mother stood by the coffin, looking at her daughter, not understanding what had really happened in Dubai. Victoria's Instagram profile remained active. The last post was 18 hours before her death. A photo on the terrace by the very pool where she drowned. A sunny morning, Victoria in a white dress, smiling at the camera. The caption under the photo, "I am living my best life." Emojis with a diamond and a star. Comments continued to appear under the post after her death. People wrote enthusiastic words, asked for advice, and admired her life. No one knew that the girl in the photo was dead, that her luxurious life was a carefully crafted lie, that behind the beautiful pictures lay a story of deception, despair, and a tragic ending. Khaled closed the case with a compensation payment. Life returned to normal. He continued to build towers, meet with partners, and attend business events. No one in his circle knew the details of what had happened. The official version was a tragic accident involving a girl who was his guest.